Yo, what is up, guys? Joker bringing you another video for the 3.24 Necropolis League, going over my opinions of the league, the good, the bad, the in between, right? In the background, I'm just going to be running some, um, it's going to be Conqueror maps and then the invitations, and then it's just going to be generic syndicate, right? Because I want to see the drop rates for the veiled orb and stuff like that. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the league. How do I feel about the Necropolis League? Honestly, I would rate this league rather high. I would give it a solid 8.5, 9 out of 10, right? And that is being said, knowing that there is still a large amount of things that are currently wrong with the league, right? So, what I mean by a large amount of things currently wrong with the league is the league mechanic itself could use some loves. All flames and the torch modifiers still need to be played with to make it somewhat viable. But with everything in as janky as a state as it is right now, I'm gonna move myself over that way you can actually see that I'm CI, and that's why I'm not dying and why I'm just face tanking everything. Uh, but yeah, with everything currently wrong with the league, I would still rate it relatively high. I think it achieved its goals amazingly, right? One of the goals of this league seems to been getting why did so many scarabs drop right there? One of the main things of this league seemed to be an introduction to crafting for players. At least that's what I took it as when I saw and started messing around with the league mechanic. You are extremely rewarded for knowing how the crafting systems and modifier tags work, right? You can make the best items in the game as long as you have a base understanding of crafting. And prior to this league, I never really messed around with crafting, right? Prior to this league, I bought 99% of my gear, but this league has been the opposite. I have bought pretty much none of my gear, and I have used the league mechanic itself to help me get upgrades anytime I needed them. So I do really, really like and appreciate that the crafting system in Necropolis made me take the time to learn about modifier tags and how to craft items, because now going into next league, I know easier ways to craft some items, right? So that's my first big pro is I do appreciate the Necropolis League mechanic. Now, all flames and the lantern are something else entirely. I think no one tested all flames, and I think no one tested lantern modifiers. The reason why I say this is because I can't see um I can't see Necropolis, All Flames, and Lantern modifiers going into the game at the level they originally were, right? The Syndicate All Flame, where you got the Rogue Exiles, was just fucking overtuned. And there's been so many all flames where I'm like, I don't know if this has fully been tested, right? And you can see that with all the crazy fucking farming strategies that we have, where Headhunter is like 4 div, Mage Blood is like 40, if anything. Yeah, it's 87. It's close enough to 40, right? So the chase unique items that you can get from mapping are insanely cheap, whereas the uniques that you get from bossing have never been more expensive. Like, they're ridiculously expensive. Normally, when a Nemesis would be a handful or a dozen or two divines, right now it's 127. And that gates a lot of people out of playing it. Like this build right here, right? It is a splitting steel trickster. And where its budget would normally be probably a third of what it is, um, this character's on a quote unquote budget right now of about 500 div. And the vast majority of that is literally just coming from the Mage Blood, the Nemesis, and the Progenoses, right? Because this is 120, this is 80, and this is 70, right? And if we actually go to like the better rolled Progenoses, it's probably more. Yeah, it's closer to 80. And then Mage Blood as well, right? And then Nemesis as well. So with those three items, just putting this build at close to 300 divines, it locks a huge amount of players out of a fun build. Where if this was another league, the amount of players that would be able to play the build is probably like double, if not triple, right? Because the only barrier to entry would be the Mage Blood, and that's normally only about 200 div, right? So the other expensive thing in this build is going to be this, but I don't see this going down at all in price, right? That's another 80 div right there. And then these fucking jewels that have attack speed and energy shield are stupidly expensive, but it's what happens when it's a best in slot build, right? So we went over the graveyard mechanic. We went over all flames. We went over the lantern. So next thing that I want to go over is yeah, we went over the graveyard. We went over all flames. We went over corpses. The next thing that I want to go over is T17 maps, right? T17 maps, in my opinion, are a mistake, at least in their current state. They're overly rewarding, but they're also overly punishing. The way that they pitched the T17 maps is that it's going to be a middle ground between an Uber boss and a normal Pinnacle boss, right? And the current in my opinion, the current state of T17 maps does not do that, because T17 maps a lot of the time are harder than Pinnacle bosses because some of these modifiers on them. It's ridiculous. They need to go ahead and they need to rework the modifiers, as well as cut the loot and difficulty, I would say, by about 50%, right? I'd say they need to go ahead and cut the difficulty by about 50% and cut the rewarding modifiers by about 15. Because right now, in its current state, they are really the only way to effectively farm anything. It's kind of stupid to not farm in T17 maps, which is a huge barrier to entry because of the fact that which is a huge barrier of entry because of the fact that majority of the player base is not going to have a character that can farm T17 maps. I'd say majority of the player base can get to regular pentacle bosses without struggling, right? They'll get a character that has maybe 3 to 5 million DPS and that'll be their cap. They never aspire to kill the uber pinnacle bosses, but now, with T17 maps, it kind of gutted the ability of farming bossing fragments, which used to be a thing. And now you kind of have to farm in a pinnacle boss zone, which is ridiculous. You have to farm in T17 maps to make any kind of currency, and like I said, that locks a huge amount of the player base out of actually doing it. Am I frozen or what the hell's going on? Oh, I was. Um, but yeah, so that's my opinion on T17 maps. I think That's everything with the league mechanic itself that I wanted to go over, right? I went over all flames, I went over the graveyard, I went over the lantern, I went over T17s. Now let's get into the things that I like about this league, right? I really like the quality of life that they've added, but revisiting Torchlight, they need to add a lot more, right? Like the vacuuming up currency that Torchlight has, they need to add that. The fact that you have a pet that can auto loop, the like bubblegum currency, I feel like they really should have that as well. Let me see. The three stash tab, the three map devices is super cool, but the map modifier seems like something else that they didn't fully test either, like I was previously mentioning. It doesn't seem like they have the right people actually testing stuff. Um, because there's modifiers on the map device that are just, oh, you have to take these, like the map explicit nodes. You have to take the map explicit nodes at end game. There's literally no reason not to. Uh, as well as strong boxes and shrines are insanely overpowered, but I believe that's just this league. So I'm not going to take that into consideration. Let me see. I really, really, really do like the changes that they did to the Atlas, right? Where they went ahead and now you can run whatever content that you like. I really like the rework to the scarabs because a lot of them are impactful, but once again, they're not balanced. So that needs to be looked at again and, balance it a little more because there's about 4 or 5 scarabs that everybody is using because once again, it would be stupid to not. So I think they need to take another look at they need to take another look at the scarabs and change them up a little bit. And they need to take a look at the Atlas tree and change some modifiers because the 100% of any mechanic is super cool. But in my opinion, there is a lot better modifiers that could be placed on the map device. So I believe that's it. So rounding it out at the end, let me think and see if I covered everything. Okay, so after double checking, I did go ahead and I hit most of the points that I wanted to. Besides from that, I feel like they should remove some of the power from scarabs onto the map device directly. If they are going to do the thing where they add the current league mechanic onto the map device, they have to have it at a strong enough state where it is not required to take the nodes on the map device just to play the league mechanic. That's probably my biggest complaint is the fact that to get the full power league mechanic, you were forced into taking the nodes on the map device, and since they are in the four corners up of the map device, you have to stretch your remaining points super thin. I wished they would have explained it a little bit better on how strong these scarabs were going to be because of the fact that a lot of people got baited early league into taking the modifier that had scarabs not dropping because we did not understand how overpowered that they were going to be. We were all taking this node up here, and majority of people were going straight for it, right? where you get the 20 passive points, but you don't drop scarabs. With how rewarding scarabs is, that was the biggest bait of the league. We read that note originally and we're like, oh my God, we get 20 free passive points. Like, this is going to be insane. And it turns out it wasn't. It was the biggest mistake, and it set so many people back super hard because they didn't know what the scarabs were going to be, right? I mean, I guess if we were able to see like all of the scarabs or at least experience how the drop rates were working, then it would have definitely changed a lot of people's starting atlas. But what are you going to do, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it. My only complaints of the league are not enough quality of life. They should have added the tree passives for the league mechanic on top of the league mechanic being as strong as it is without them. So pretty much doubling the power of the league mechanic because it's the current league mechanic. It should be significantly stronger than everything else, and the scarabs are good. They should have gave us more of a heads up of what it was going to be like. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't have very many complaints, but I do have a lot of praise. I think they did the league very well overall. Um, could it be better? Definitely. But like I mentioned, at this point, GGG has not put out like a flawless league in forever. So the fact that we have a good enough league that just needs minor tweaks is a huge plus for me. This league, in my opinion, is one of the best leagues that they put out recently. Because yes, there is some things that definitely do need to be addressed, but the core concept is there so much better than a large amount of other leagues. But yeah, that's just my opinion. I know this video is a little bit more of a rant, but yeah, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with this and future content. I'm testing the conquerors with the invitations now. Now that you get a conqueror fight every set of four, and seeing what kind of results. I may or may not make a video. Depends. I've had a bunch of friends telling me that I need to get back on RuneScape because it's been a while and they want to do some bossing. So I'm probably going to go over there. And then I know we have a new cycle uh for Last Epoch coming here pretty soon. On top of the new cycle for Last Epoch, I'm pretty sure there's season 4 D4 coming out pretty soon, and I am still playing Torchlight. So right now my time is already spread incredibly thin with the amount of games that I'm playing. But yeah, like I mentioned, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with this and future content. And until next time, take care.